Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today's one of those rare but occasional time warp episodes.
Yeah.
Where you're most likely watching this on Thursday, but we're recording this on Tuesday.
Time warp.
Yeah. It's
like
Back
it.
to the Future.
That's right.
Something or other.
Cue Huey Lewis in the news.
Yeah, there you go. So it's currently 3 on Tuesday, but I'm out on Thursday, so we had to record ahead of time. So if there's some groundbreaking news between Tuesday and Thursday, we'll cover it next time, I guess.
Yeah, we didn't cover it.
We didn't get to it today. So apologize in advance if there's some groundbreaking stuff we're not going to cover today. But Joe, the past couple of days, there's been a couple of things in the news that I've noticed that have been kind of a trend. So I wanted to kind of rope a couple of things together, toss them at you, and we'll just see what happens.
Okay.
And we should warn people. I gave you a heads up what we're going to talk about today. Both of the things we're going to talk about, I don't know very much about.
All right.
So it's always dangerous, right?
Yeah.
When we start talking about stuff that we admit we don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But there's enough of there's a theme in the air that I thought we could talk about. So
in the, would you say the zeitgeist?
in the zeit, you might say. So again, this is way outside of my league. I'm not really a hip hop guy, rap guy.
Okay.
But there's this ongoing beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake. So if you're not in the rap world, most people would say they're probably some of the best rappers out there right now. I think there's a little bit of conversation. There's the top 3, and they're 2 of the top 3.
Yeah.
Most people would say they're kind of the most influential rappers right now.
Yeah.
Again, I'm out of my league here. I don't know much about them. But I guess they've been having this back and forth feud for several years. You said what, going back to 13?
So according to Chat 4.0,
Yeah.
it's all the way back to 2013, and then some subtle casting of shade back and forth, but it escalated in the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I guess there's been 9. They've released 9 songs where they're going back and forth at each other, saying some mean, hurtful things about each other. But again, I'm not part of this culture, so a lot of this is probably just my ignorance. But I think it started as kind of like good fun, like, hey, let's just kind of poke fun at each other. Let's just let this be a rivalry type thing. But it's gotten more and more serious, a little bit more hurtful, a little more shameful recently. I should say that I read a couple things that some people think that they're in on this together.
Oh, okay.
Hey, let's razz each other. Let's just up our Spotify numbers and get some national attention just for this fight that they may or may not actually be in a fight. Who knows? There's a conspiracy out there.
Oh, yes.
But
yes.
let's say it's real. So let's say these 2 guys, top of their game, they don't like each other very much, and they're pretty publicly going after each other, saying some pretty hurtful things.
Right.
Okay. So again, I don't know much more beyond that. I'm not very familiar with their catalog.
Right.
But that's the story. Okay. Another thing that's in the news this week is, I think, Saturday night or Sunday night, Netflix had this big event where they hosted the roasting of Tom Brady. So this has become a thing over the past, I don't know, decade or so, where Comedy Central's done a bunch of these where they roast somebody. They bring in a famous celebrity, and then they bring in other celebrities just to be mean to them. But it's a comedy event where they kind of roast them, and so it's been a thing for a while. They had one for Tom Brady this week, and it was a big deal. They had rented out this giant stadium in L.A., and a bunch of really famous people were there to roast Tom Brady. It was live on Netflix. I think it was like 3 hours. It was a big thing. But since then, some headlines have come out of some funny things that happened. But again, how these things typically go. It started out in good fun. Maybe a couple of things maybe kind of crossed the line and hurt Tom's feelings. And so there's been a little bit of like, oh, did this person go too far? And is Brady mad at this person now? Anyway, as always, lots of preamble. But I think it's interesting. 2 pretty big cultural things this week where basically people are very publicly being mean to each other. And that's what's trending this week is there's this rap feud and all this Tom Brady brouhaha after his roast.
Right.
So it just strikes me that those are 2 of the biggest stories, people publicly being mean to each other. Is that it's rare for this kind of thing to be taking over the news, and especially kind of in our divisive world.
Right.
That's what I want to toss to you. Why do we like to tear people down?
Right.
And what should we learn from this kind of weird week in pop culture?
I certainly think there's an overlap between both stories. I do think there's some distinction in them as well. The Tom Brady one first.
Okay.
I mean, this guy's uber successful, most successful quarterback. When he played, he was a polarizing figure. Like, people either worshipped him or they really hated him, right?
Yep.
And then Deflategate, and then like he went to a different team and won, and all this stuff. Had a beautiful wife, had a lot going for him. He's made buckets and buckets of money. And so I just think that there's something, I don't know if it's just contemporary culture, if it's been something prevalent in all cultures, but we don't mind people being successful, but we want them to either have earned it, or if they didn't earn it, if they had like an easier street to get there, that they kind of at some point get their bumps and bruises along the way.
Yeah.
I think this goes back even to like the court jester in Camelot lore, where, I mean, you're born a king, you're born into the kingdom, prince, princess, or whatever. So when you become king, you haven't really earned it. You just stayed alive and your parents passed away. And so it's kind of nice to have like a court jester who gets to razz you a little bit, to kind of humanize you a little bit. So I think that's kind of what's going on with the Tom Brady stuff.
Okay.
And so I think people are able to kind of get their licks in on Tom Brady. Maybe he's a little more enjoyable of a character from here on out. Who knows? Yeah. But I just think that some people say like this guy had a pretty easy college football career. He got drafted. He got put in right at the right time to win a Super Bowl early, right? Mm-hmm. And they seem to have a great cast of characters, great coach, alongside of him, at New England in particular. I mean, he benefited on like the weird tuck rule in that one game versus the Raiders that people still bring up all the time. And so I think at some point, like some people in society, like we need to be able to get our sucker punch in on Tom every now and again. So
is it kind of that example of like it's okay to punch up, but don't punch down? Like that's kind of the thing.
Okay.
It's like it's okay to poke fun at people who are thriving and successful, but it's kind of looked at as being rude, disrespectful if you punch down. I
think that could be fair. Yeah, I think that could be in play here. So I think with the Kendrick Lamar and Drake thing, I mean these two guys have worked hard. I think even Drake got a pretty good start without having a label. Like he really worked hard. Kendrick came from South Central LA, which is like hip hop haven, and to be as successful as he is, I think is pretty cool. And Kendrick had an album that got was it a Pulitzer Prize?
I think so.
Yeah, which is really stunning that a hip hop artist would be so embraced by, I don't know, academic elitist culture that he would receive a prize like this, right? And so maybe there was a sense where both of them, their shine was lacking. Maybe their star wasn't as high, so maybe they are using it as opportunity. I do think that this kind of rivalry, envy, this us versus them thing has always been in hip hop. Like from the very beginning, there's always been like either two hip hop groups or artists, antagonizing one another. It does seem to add a bit of the flair of the dramatic in their music creation. And so I was watching a news report on this, and some said like the silver lining of this is like because Kendrick doesn't just crank out records like other artists do. Yeah. It's like almost on track every 5 years. Like he really does a deep dive on like doing something quite different. This is like inspiring him to create more content. So all of his fans are excited because they're hearing new music from him a lot more frequently than in time past. So I think that this is probably embedded in the category of music that they're in. There just seems to be this antagonism that's built in, and that makes it more pure. If there's no antagonism, some might say it's not pure hip hop because it's not pointing at something, it's not attacking something, in some lyrical way. And so I think that this is just par for the course in this long story of hip hop music in America, and it probably will endure. So down the road, it's going to be two different artists, but for right now, number one, number two, however people rank Drake and Kendrick, like they're the ones who are at the top, like they're the only one next to one another, and so they're kind of the usual suspect to be able to be like the brunt of their hip hop lyrics and stuff. So
okay, that's good. I think that's good, helpful context to have there.
Sure.
I mentioned this story to you earlier today, and I was kind of saying, like, well, what can we say other than just be kind to each other? We always end up at something like that, right?
Yeah.
But for people watching and listening, like, since this seems to be a thing where it's culturally, you almost get rewarded in culture for poking fun or just being mean in this era.
Right.
What other kind of either biblical or philosophical things are on your mind that like, what can we learn? How can we be different from this? Or is this just okay? It's part of the world? Or what would you say are some takeaways we can consider?
I think feud, this comes from Luke Burgess's book that he wrote about rivalry and envy. I've mentioned it before, but he's big into the Girardian philosophy of mimetics and rivalry and envy. And he made this great point, like where there's only conflict when we're after the same thing. And so if you and I are on different pursuits, we're probably going to be just fine. But it's like, this is where like sports teams have rivalries because we tend to be after the same thing, every single season, right? Or if somebody has conflict in the workplace, it's because maybe someone who's in the peer level in the organization, like they're after, maybe there's like one promotion out there and both of you like to have it, right? And so I just would say whenever there is like animus towards another person in our life or a entity, it's because we probably have a lot more shared than we do different. We really have the same pursuit. And so maybe we could just think it through, like, this person isn't altogether bad and deserving of my animus, but there's actually something about them that's just like me. And so maybe it would be an invitation to actually get to know the fuller story, try to dig for that shared commonality to where maybe the conflict isn't as ferocious and venomous as it would be if we go unexamined into the situation. So
good.
Someone's like blowing a kazoo or something
like
out in the hallway.
I think there's some construction happening out there in the hallway, so sorry if you're hearing some weird noises, but one more thing I wanted to toss that. We'll try to keep going here. Hopefully our mics are doing their job and picking us up.
Yeah.
One other thought I had was, if you're Tom Brady, again, very good looking guy, way more money than any person should have, every level of success, right? So I guess I wonder if there's something we can learn too from, do we just, if we're at the top of our game and if people are poking fun at us, do we learn to just, is the healthy, mature thing to do to just accept it? Or is there kind of this line where like, no, you've gone too far and I need to stand up for myself? Can we learn from that somehow? Or I guess, obviously, again, we're not in Brady's shoes, but can we learn from like, oh, this is just part of being in a workplace or family culture and just let it rub off? Or when is it too far? I need to step in and address this. It's kind of the Will Smith thing, right?
I certainly think that we have license just in our general contract of being human with one another. Like if we're being dehumanized, I think that we do need to stand up for ourselves. Now, I think we have to worry about retaliation. I think this is a cautionary tale of Samson. It's really a weird story to tell our kids to integrate them into the stories of the Bible. But I think that if you zoom out, like what the greater lesson there is, you rarely get even with somebody who pursues you unless you're very thoughtful. Because Samson would do one thing and his enemies would escalate it, and then he would escalate it further to where there's like almost permanent destruction, lives taken, lives broken, societies broken because of it. And so I would say if you are going to respond, if I'm going to respond, what's the most productive and redemptive way, and not retaliation or retributive, but restorative? Might be the thing to consider. So I think that we do need to have a calm, strong presence if we're going to confront somebody. Brene Brown talks about having a soft front but a hard spine or back. So like go ahead and stand up for yourself, but also like try to find the tenderness of our shared humanity to where we're not just like trying to eliminate and exterminate this thing in our life, but what can I learn from it? Because once again, the conflict is because I'm sharing something with the person that's involved. So I would say there's some things you should just avoid. Like we should not descend into this type of behavior. But if we do need to stand up for ourselves, I think it's important to like, okay, what's the most constructive way to do that? Because on the other end, that person's got a life, they've got an identity that hopefully stays intact through it all. And they probably got loved ones attached to them, and we must think about them. And I think that helps us with a more creative response. This reminded me, so it always does, of the third season of Ted Lasso. Okay, so let me just do a little Lasso ditty. So if you know the plot of the show, second season, at the very end, there's a big rift between two characters. And there's like this, sense in the background of the third season, are these folks going to settle? how's that going to happen? And some information comes out in that season that gives everybody a bit of a pause. And in one of the episodes, Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis' character, said this, and I thought this quote was good.
Okay.
He said, "I don't know about you, but I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments," which is a cool thing. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be judged by our weakest moments, none of us are absolutely all of us.
Yeah.
Because we tend to do is judge others on their weakest moments, and we tend to want to be judged on our strongest, most put together moments. Then he continues. So either all of us or none of us by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather by the strength we show when and if we ever are given a second chance, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just think in any conflict, there is a settling, whether it's constructive or not, okay? Yeah. Then I think that we also have to take into consideration, okay, what's going to be my response after this? Mm-hmm. And if I get a second chance, can I act a bit more appropriately and not in the way that I did before, so that it's more constructive, more redemptive, more lovely and healthy for my own sake, but also for all those involved. So I just would say that.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I think we always come back to like Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 and 6, like that kind of stuff. If you were to try to, if someone's in a similar situation, you're trying to give them, here's what Jesus would recommend that you do based on, let's just say Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 and 6.
Yes.
Turn the other cheek. What are some of the kind of highlights that you would throw into this conversation? Do you have anything from that you would throw in?
So if you go to Matthew 7, which is the end of the sermon as well, not to fact check you. Okay, anyways. But there is a structure to the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah. And the last chapter is, because Matthew 5 and 6 have to deal with God's arriving, his kingdom's arriving, kind of in unusual places, and those who we wouldn't expect are kind of the front of the line of it. Mm-hmm. And then chapter 6 is like, give yourself over to God, like trust God. Mm-hmm. Verse 33 is kind of the middle point of the Sermon on the Mount. Okay. Chapter 7 is like the master's degree lap, which is like, now that you've given yourself to God, give everyone else over to God. And he does this in a couple different ways. He talks about like not casting pearls to swine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think what he means there is, if you ever spend any time with pigs, I've got minimal time. Like they'll literally eat anything that's in their pail. Yeah. But some stuff is more helpful and nutritious to them than others. Yeah. Pearls are very valuable. Mm-hmm. Pigs don't care. Yeah. It doesn't feed them, so like they will eat a pearl. And it won't satisfy them, so they'll be hangry even further because they haven't been fed. Yeah. But you gave them something good. And I think sometimes sometimes we like to control people with good things. Oh, Matt, this will be good for you if you read it more into you, right? Like I would like control you by doing this, something like that, right? Right. But like if you don't see it as valuable, it's a way of control of somebody. So I think sometimes we do that. And I think Jesus would say, beware of doing that. And then I just go back to, Jesus says, do not judge lest you be judged. Yeah. The measure you use is going to be measured back to you. Right. Like I'm of the opinion that Jesus does not want us to judge. Now, Paul says we can judge those inside the church in 1 Corinthians. I think Paul's talking as a church planner out on the frontier. I'd rather take Jesus' command there. Because here's what happens, like when we judge people, like what happens if our judgment of them doesn't come to pass? Then it's actually measured back to us, a people of poor judgment. Like if I say this person's a terrible worker, in our workplace, but maybe they just were super tired because they were agonizing over a tough decision or they heard bad news and they just weren't all there. Yeah. But like they actually show, like they're actually a fantastic worker. They just had an off day. Then it's measured back to me as bad judgment. And so I just would say, don't try to control people with good things. Yeah. Okay, let them figure out their own life. And then do our best not to judge others because there's a good chance that we're not seeing the whole picture. We don't know what we're talking about. Right. And we need to allow that person to be a mystery to us and only tend to the things that we know clearly about that person and then work from it there and just leave the rest to mystery. Yeah. And just figure it out along the way. So yeah, that's good. Can you imagine, what if Kendrick or Drake releases a song where they start quoting Matthew 5, 6, 7. They would. I think that they would. And I think it would be Kendrick. Kendrick's got some godlike themes in some of his music. So you just kind of wonder, in their upbringing, like, did they have some religious, stuff in their background? But maybe more Kendrick than Drake. So, anyways. We'll see. Yeah. Hope they can resolve their issues, whatever's going on behind the scenes. Yes, and do it in a way that like teaches and trains people so that the world will be better in the wake of all this stuff, whether it's a conspiracy or not.
Well,
right?
yeah, either way, because people are clearly watching, right? Like, how are they going to handle this thing? Are they ever going to resolve it? So,
yes, it was all Good Morning America.
It was all over the place.
It was the most awkward segment. I'm like, what are these people talking? Like, there's other stuff to talk about.
It's almost like if you and me were supposed to talk about this, almost equally as awkward. That's good. You pulled a lot of good things out of there, so that's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I hope that was helpful to you watching. And, yeah, there's good lessons for us to learn. Conflict resolution all over the place.
Yep.
So that's good. Okay. Well, on Thursday, for those of you watching or listening, thanks for being here. Hope to see you on Sunday. We'll be back again next week.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thanks for watching.
Yep.
See you next time.
See you next time.